You've just given a keynote speech to the summit here. What would you say was your key message?
In my view, the scientific community needs diplomacy, and diplomatic world needs the scientific community. This is a mutual exchange which will be beneficial to all, not only these communities, but the rest of the world. Because we have learned through this pandemic and all the misery we went through, that we really need to know better. The scientific truth is what will help us to make the right choices. And we need to rebuild trust in the science as a basis for choices.
How do you think that GESDA can rebuild that trust in science, given that always science is being used for good, but sometimes it's also been used for bad? So how can GESDA make sure that the opportunities are realized, but also mitigate the risks?
Well, this is not new. Every scientific advance has posed risk as well as opportunities. But of course, the pace, as someone said during the meeting today, is extremely accelerated. So we need to be aware of this and try to communicate as much as we can, as clearly as we can, both communities with each other and with the rest of the world. But also, we need to include others. A multi-stakeholder approach to this discourse about solutions is fundamental to create trust.
One of the messages that came out of the opening ceremony was very much about how GESDA wants to enable inclusivity and equity. So your thoughts on that, because of course that's very similar to the agenda, the 2030 agenda of the United Nations.
Indeed, as United Nations, we are very pleased to see the approach taken by GESDA that is based on the values that make, the core principles of the UN: inclusivity, leave no one behind, human rights, and a look at what is a people-centered future.
How do you think GESDA can reinforce multilateralism, which we know has taken a few blows in recent years? So how can GESDA reinforce that idea, that principle?
Well, we like the idea that the scientific community is so intent in working with the multilateral organizations and foremost with the United Nations, because we need to inject that sense of knowledge and reality, into our discourse as diplomats. And also, I would like to say the Secretary General Common Agenda, a new vision for the future, includes many references to scientific inputs which are needed to have a clearer anticipatory view. So I think there is convergence there.
One of the speakers actually said that they felt that science was often on the periphery of policymakers' agenda. Do you feel that science needs to be brought forefront with the UN as well?
Well, yes, we certainly agree with that principle. And as I was saying earlier, a multi-stakeholder approach includes the scientific community as well as other parts of the society. And we need all these components to be open and discuss with each other the needs and the possible solutions.
And one final question, really, why now? Why is it so important that there is this multilateral, collaborative, multi-stakeholder, equitable and inclusive approach now?
I think we have all learned the hard way through these unfortunate years of pandemic how nowadays every problem is probably a global problem, and individuals and nation states can do a lot, of course, but not everything which is required by the dimension and the pace and the scope of the issues, the challenges we face.